সবাইকে নববর্ষের শুভেচ্ছা জানিয়ে শুরু করছি আরো একটা এপিসোড। এবং আজকে যিনি আছেন তার ব্যাপারে তো ইন্ট্রোডাকশন দিবই, কিন্তু সর্বপ্রথম যেটা বলতে হবে যে আমার মনে হয় যে আমাদের বাংলাদেশের নারী ক্রিকেট দল, আমাদের বাংলাদেশের মেয়েরা বাঘিনীরা নববর্ষে আমার মনে হয় আমাদের জন্য একটা দারুণ উপহার দিয়েছে, একটা জয় দিয়ে। এবারে ওমেন্স ক্রিকেট কোয়ালিফায়ার চলছে পাকিস্তানে, যেটাতে আসলে যেখান থেকে টপ দুটা দল পরবর্তীতে যে বিশ্বকাপটা রয়েছে ভারতে হবে আর এই বছরই, সেটার জন্য কোয়ালিফাই করবে। সেটার লড়াইয়েই বাংলাদেশের মেয়েরা আছে। যারা দেখছেন খেলা তারা তো ফলো করছেন, যারা জানেন না, আমরা যে মুহূর্তে রেকর্ড করছি নববর্ষের দিন পহেলা বৈশাখে, তার আগের দিনই বাংলাদেশ আয়ারল্যান্ডকে হারিয়েছে। সেই সবকিছু নিয়েই কথা বলবো আমরা। বাট উইদাউট ফার্দার ডিউ, I think it's about time that I introduce my guest, who is an international commentator, presenter, and I'd say is the spokesperson of multiple countries in cricket. But today on this show, we're particularly going to cover the women's qualifiers, and at the same time, the country where he belongs. This is none other than Andrew Leonard. Hi, Lenny. How are you?
I'm really good, mate. What an outrageously kind welcome. And yeah, Irish people don't take compliments too well, so we'll move swiftly on from those and get very much into the subject matter as soon as possible. Great to see you again, mate. How are you?
Yeah, pleasure. It was funny how you said that Irish people don't take compliments too well.
No, we don't. Cillian Murphy, our Oscar winner last year, was like, we can't handle this. Let's move on and talk about something else. So I'll stick down that thread. But I do thank you for your kindness and absolutely wish you a very happy new year. I think it's a special day there in Bangladesh, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much. So firstly, I would want to wish you a very happy Bengali New Year as well. The way we say it, though, is ShubhoNoboborsho. ShubhoNoboborsho.
ShubhoNoboborsho.
That's right.
In Bengali. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to reciprocally respond because, as you know, I'm almost half Irish, half Nepali at this stage. I spend so much time in Nepal, and it's the same for Nepal. It's Nepali New Year today, so I've been getting messages from thousands of people there across Kathmandu and Pokhara and Biratnagar all across the country. So it's Nayam Barsa Ko Subha Kamana in Nepali, which is 2082 is the year now in Nepal. I don't know if it's the same in the Bengali calendar, but definitely we're living in the future in Nepal and possibly Bangladesh too.
yes, but how do you say it in Nepali?
Nayam Barsako Subhakamana, and I'm sure that's probably going to be wrong, and I'll get Nepali people telling me it's slightly wrong, but hopefully they'll like the endeavor. Not Nayam Barsako Subhakamana, I think.
Nayam Barsako Subhakamana.
Yeah, that's better the way I pronounced it already. Yes, you're already half or quarter Nepali now. You're honorary Nepali.
learning from you.
Thanks,
but thank you so much for being here. And it's about time I tell everyone that this is Andrew Leonard on the mic with Samannoy Ghosh. We've got you. It was what a match, a dramatic match yesterday when we are recording it at the moment. Bangladesh versus Ireland, and you were there commentating on the match. I hope your heart is all right. Did you go see a doctor?
Yeah, barely. Look, utter heartbreak from the Irish perspective, and kind of 3 consecutive heartbreaks. It probably makes it so difficult for them, to be honest, Samannoy. They've played some wonderful cricket. If you're just looking at the scorecards or the points table, you're going, oh, well, they've played 3 and they've lost 3. What does it matter? But they've really, been honest with you, dominated their 3 higher ranked oppositions for much of those contests without getting across the line. And possibly of the 3 games that they played, opening with defeat to the host Pakistan and then defeat to the West Indies in the second game, they actually probably dominated even more of the contest against Bangladesh. So a real heartbreaker yesterday, but what a fight back from the Bangladesh women's team. I think there's no way that side 2, 3, 4 years ago, let alone 5 or 7 years ago, would have had any chance of winning that game. Usually when you get the kind of top 5 or 6 batters, that's that. But yeah, an incredible performance from the player of the match, Ritu Moni, and the support from the numbers 8, 9 and 10 batters. Without them, it wouldn't have been possible. I think it was 139 for 6, needing the best part of 100 at over a run of ball or thereabouts. And yeah, it really looked like only one result possible. Maybe even a chance for Ireland to get a big win and a net run rate boost. But an incredible performance by Bangladesh. Really, really impressed by them in their first 2 games. They're 2 from 2, and it's still a logjam at the top of the table, but a really strong opportunity to qualify for what would be their second Women's World Cup.
Yeah, that I think summarizes a lot. And truth be told, I was following yesterday's match. I was working on domestic cricket here. There's a Dhaka Premier Division Cricket League going on at the moment.
Seen some clips, yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. We don't want to
go there. Too much cricket. I always know what's going on.
Yeah. You are an updated man, and you're always watching cricket. I've seen that when you came here. But just to go back to the women's qualifiers and to refer to Ireland, to be fair, as I was saying, I watched the match, and the match before was also a heartbreak as well for the Ireland team, right? So, and they were actually playing very good, and they were actually dominating the match. So I second you on that. And it seemed like, and when they got on the field in the second half, they were all very, the body language was very positive. And that gave me a hint. I was like, oh, they're very positive. They're confident. With 235 on the board, a couple of wickets down, everyone was smiling, and that rubs off, right? And I was like, oh, this is going to be a hard match. And, they seem to be on top. But how Bangladesh, the Tigresses, made a comeback, made the match even more special, made the win even more special, didn't it?
It really did. And it was, I suppose, absolutely a replica of every game really we've seen in the competition so far. Maybe just Bangladesh's opening win against Thailand and their first game day was the only one-sided contest of the whole tournament. 6 really good teams here, all capable of beating each other on their day. I called them the Tigers on air yesterday, but the Tigresses is actually exactly what I should have been saying. And they are very much of a new breed. I think the benefit that they've got from coming into the ICC Women's Championship has been absolutely massive, getting those 24 ODIs across that 3-year cycle. It's massively raised their belief. I think they've got a very good coaching staff and set up their head coach. Obviously, going back to a Bangladeshi origin head coach, David Hemp is also there as the batting coach. I see a really good spin bowling coach. I'm not going to pronounce his surname, Dinuk from Sri Lanka, who's done an amazing job with that 4-pronged spin attack. But you're spot on. Ireland were utterly on top. In fact, the very first delivery Sharman Akhtar faced is probably one of the rare bad decisions we've seen in the tournament. It was a pretty clear outside edge, it looked like, through to the keeper. That would have actually made it, I think, 1 for 2. They did end up 2 for 2 still, because Tanjim got out the following Prendergast over. And look, Ireland have done so many things so right throughout the competition, but ultimately they are knocked out. They're the first of the 6 teams knocked out. They had a horrible schedule, a very difficult schedule, 3 games in 5 days from the start of the tournament, with just 1 day off in between each of the 3 matches against the 3 highest ranked sides in the comp. So I don't know who put that schedule together, but they certainly weren't Irish fans. It was probably done randomly. But look, the reality is they do have themselves to blame. They bowled 29 extras in the opening game against Pakistan. They dropped 6 catches against the West Indies, and they dropped 3 catches yesterday against Bangladesh, and all 3 were of Ritu Modi. I think she was on 1, on 4, and even the one on 49. If that was taken, Ireland still would have probably won the game. So whilst they've played brilliant cricket, they just haven't showed that, I suppose, clinical nature that they've needed to close games out. People say winning is a habit. Sadly, also losing is a habit, and they just haven't got into that winning habit. I think, to be frank, if they'd won either of their first 2 games, they would have closed out that win yesterday. But the pressure of these qualification events is what makes them so brilliant to watch, and why I love covering the ICC pathway events so much. This is a rarity within the pathway events, where we have more full member nations than associate nations. Usually they're almost entirely associate, or maybe in Ireland or Zimbabwe has to drop down and join the associates to earn their place back up to the big events, the ICC World Cups that every team wants to play at. But this time we've got 4 test nations and 2 associates, and really the pressure gets to every single team in these pathway events. If you remember the men's qualifiers in Zimbabwe in 18 and in 2023, you saw when the West Indies went there, when Zimbabwe went there, they just couldn't quite cope with the pressure. That's what the associates do day in and day out. And look, it's been a brilliant tournament so far. I know because of the IPL and now the start of the PSL, it's probably not getting the scale of attention that it may deserve, but but that doesn't lessen the quality of cricket and the improvement in general of the women's game. I've been really enjoying every second here in Lahore.
Oh, yeah, fantastic. And you know, just to touch base on the coaching staff, Sarwar Imran, who is a vastly experienced coach, he took over recently, right before the qualifiers. As I mentioned, you know, a lot of experience. He started coaching in 1984. He hails from BKSP, the Bangladesh Cricket Pratishthan. So, you know the kind of players BKSP has produced over the years, and a lot of the credit goes to the coaches. He is a coach who is respected immensely. At the same time, the previous regime also, you know, I think they played a role as well, because you didn't just build players, but at the same time, being on the field, that winning habit from the dressing room, that matters. So I'm sure he's bringing in all his experience. At the same time, Dinuk's there, you mentioned him being there. I think everyone together, Nigar Sultana Jyoti as a captain. I think it's everything's positive. But just to refer back to the match, you know, I am enjoying the tournament as well. As you were saying, you know, 4 big teams in there trying to qualify, battling it out to get the 2 spots for the World Cup. But just going back to the match, you know, Ireland winning the toss, deciding to have a bat first. It was a mixed bag when it came to Bangladesh fielding. They were good in terms of ground fielding, but they dropped catches as well, didn't they?
Yeah, you're spot on. They dropped 4 catches, which was a real surprise given that performance that they put in against Thailand that was so professional. I think something they did incredibly well, though, and these are always kind of the small things you'll never see in a scorecard. And you know, when you're doing the scale of broadcast that we have here, which has been really good coverage, but you're actually commentating every ball, you really kind of live and breathe every moment of the match. And what Bangladesh did so well in the last 12 to 14 overs. They managed their boundary sweepers immaculately, and they got the angles absolutely spot on, and they got them about 5 yards off the rope. So Ireland ran very, very few twos in the last little period. And because Prendergast had already been dismissed, Amy Hunter's the other kind of big hitter alongside Gabby Lewis, and then Louise Little was left out of the side. She's the one at the end who can kind of strike 4s and 6s. There wasn't really enough power within the Irish batting lineup, despite Laura Delaney's impressive innings. She made 63 off 75. She made it a good clip, but as soon as she tried to accelerate, you could just see that the power wasn't quite there. Again, obviously a little bit of fatigue kicking in, because that first innings, it was the first day-night game of the tournament, so that was played during the extra heat of the day. So even though at 235 you would have taken that at the start from an Irish perspective, they really should have got 250 or 260. And the professionalism from Bangladesh squeezing Ireland and kind of restricting the boundaries and the twos at the same time meant that never there was really an over of more than 7 or 8 at most. 235 was okay, but really with the platform that they had, I think they were 182 for 4 when Laura Delaney was still at the crease with best part of 10 overs to go. You should get 250 from there. You should get 7 and over from there, 8 and over from there. They didn't, and that kept the 235 within the compass. But the other thing you've got to remember in the chase, Bangladesh in their history, they've only posted more than 250 once before this tournament. They made it a 3rd time when they got that big total, their record total against Thailand in the tournament's opening game for them. They've never chased more than 211. But like historically, Bangladeshi men's sides never chased well, and they never chased big totals. That's been, you know, tripled down on by the women's side. They're obviously in a much more embryonic stage. They're kind of probably where the men's team were at maybe in the early 2000s or the latter part of that decade. They're still kind of taking their first real steps into the highest levels of the women's game, coming into the ICC Women's Championship, first Women's World Cup for the 50 over format 4 years ago. So for them to have never chased down more than 210 before, to need 236 to win, ironically, their previous highest chase was at the same ground, at the Gaddafi against Pakistan, and that was by 9 wickets, by a 1-wicket margin of victory. They just about got there. But I'll tell you something, for probably 95% of that match yesterday, it didn't look in any way likely. In fact, really only with 3 overs to go, when it was 22 off 18, did you go, well, hold on, they could actually do this. And then sadly for Arlene Kelly, she had Ritu Moni dropped at square leg. She didn't round out a particularly good over. I think it went for 13. Then it was 9 to win off 2. The big talking point in the Irish media and the Irish coverage of the game has been the lack of usage of Orla Prendergast, given how good a bowler she is and how brilliant she has been. She's apparently under a workload management of a maximum of 7 overs per game. But you would imagine with a tournament this important, obviously player safety and their physical well-being is of the utmost importance. But with everything on the line, I think it's probably harsh to say, but if she'd bowled 10 overs in each of the 3 games, Ireland probably win all 3 of them, maybe 2 of them. And actually, she only ended up bowling 6 yesterday because I think she was being held back to bowl the 50th. So there's so many ifs and buts for Ireland. But really, I guess the story of yesterday is maybe, I know it's because it's against Ireland, it won't read as Bangladesh women's greatest ever win. I'd put that up there for me as their greatest ever win. And I think from talking to the captain afterwards, while she didn't kind of emphatically say that's our greatest win in our history, you could see from the celebrations and from, you know, the passion on show that they were utterly elated, and it's definitely one of their best ever performances.
Yeah. So just to reiterate what Andrew Leonard just mentioned, that he would rate this win of the Bangladesh women as their greatest ever win in women's ODIs. And they won by 2 wickets.
I absolutely would. And I'm not saying that like from a biased Irish perspective, thinking Ireland are one of the best teams in the world. They're not. But the nature of the victory, I don't think we've ever seen a Bangladesh women's side do that under such duress, under such pressure. I think David Hemp deserves massive credit for what he did in terms of kind of tweaking that mindset. Coming in, I know he's mainly with the National Cricket Academy and the high performance stuff in the men's, but coming in for this tour, you could definitely see a more attacking mindset. I think the bottom 4 Bangladeshi batters in their history of about 200 international runs collectively, 19 for Janatul Firdaus, 18 not out for Nahid Akhtar, and even the 5 for Rabia Khan were critical contributions. Without those, Ritu Moni couldn't have made her first ever international 50. And, you know, it's amazing to think of someone like her. She's 32 years of age. She's played, 120, 130 internationals. She's never made a 50. It's remarkable. So there's all of a sudden a belief there. And what a game, what a win. The only problem is for Bangladesh, even though they're 2 from 2, they're still going to have to play some very good cricket from here to qualify. It's getting very, very tight at the top.
Yeah, neck and neck at the top, and they're going to face stronger teams going forward. We're going to talk about those, but you know, just to touch base, you know, I'm really happy how David Hemp is working with the Bangladesh women batters. It shows, but at the same time, Nasruddin Farooq Shojib, who's been a player himself, was the batting coach previously. I think he's taking charge of the women's emerging team very soon. So if he hasn't already, and he has worked on their batting as well. Those things are there. And last series when Bangladesh women traveled West Indies, I had the privilege of going there, covering those matches.
Terrible trip to have to do.
Well, I'm not talking about the flights. Once you're there, you have an amazing time.
God, I'm surprised you agreed to it. I'm disappointed in you. I thought you should have turned that down. You know, terrible trip.
No, trip, not a terrible trip. Amazing. It was a blessing, really. It was a blessing, really. But the reason I'm bringing up is not to show off that I've been to the West Indies, but rather that Ritu Moni wasn't part of that squad when Bangladesh traveled earlier this year. Right before this, when they traveled, the Ritu Moni was not there. She was rested, and I think she was out of form before that. In the domestic, she scored runs, but she's worked on her batting. I've watched some clips where she's working with Nasruddin Farooq Shojib, and then I'm sure David Hemp as well, and that shows. And I think that mentality, because as you mentioned, as we all know, that they have never chased historically nothing. You know, like 211 was the previous best, so 235 now, and that gives you a boost in confidence, a confidence in the lower order. But having said all of that, in the Thailand match, the top order fired, and I think that needs to be continued because going forward, you're going to face stronger teams. But I think everything justified. How would you rate Ritu Moni's performance? Yes, she was dropped more than once, but at the same time, you at the end of the day, you still do have to finish it and get the team over the line.
Yeah, look, under the most incredible of pressures, you know, the way that this tournament works with 6 teams with just 2 qualifiers, even if you lose one game, you're putting yourself into a position where you may not dictate your own fate anymore because 3 sides could. And actually, with the way it's playing out now, it's quite likely we might end up with a 3-way tie with 4 wins each at the top of the table. So you just can't afford to lose games. You really can't. It's a pretty cutthroat format. There's no second chances. And actually looking at the table, West Indies play Pakistan today. Were West Indies to lose that, they're basically all but gone because of Ireland losing to Bangladesh yesterday. If Ireland had beaten Bangladesh, it would have kept a lot more permutations of getting through with 3 wins as being possible. Outstanding innings, huge pressure. Yes, she had some moments of fortune. I think the catch behind with the keeper standing up when she was on none, that happens. You know, the keeper can't really have much sway over that. But the one that she gave away, the backward point to Sophie McMahon, who was on as a subfielder, I think she was only on the field for 11 balls in total yesterday. That would have been the second wicket in the over. That was really the critical turning point. Did get that bit of fortune on 49 too, but you don't see those in the scorebook. You've got to take, you know, your opportunities, your chances. There's a guy called Jaskaran Malhotra at an unbeaten 100 against Papua New Guinea for USA years ago, and in the final over he hit 6 sixes and joined that unbelievably exclusive club, the most exclusive club in world cricket. I think he was dropped 5 times in that game. Nobody remembers that. I only remember that because I was there commentating on it. So you know, it
doesn't tell you that.
Exactly, you know. So as a batter, I don't think you can even consider the drop chances. And like the Gabby Lewis innings yesterday is a good counterpoint to that, because she was dropped, caught and bowled off Genital Ferdous, the off spinner, right? She then got out the exact same way, you know, 10, 15 runs later, 2 or 3 overs later, off the same bowlers. So that's when it matters, because you've been given that life, you've been given that chance, and you haven't maybe necessarily learned that, okay, that's a way in which I might get into trouble. So the thing that she did so well, I've got to thank one of the Twitter guys. I'm just going to read you this one because I actually saved it for it. I knew we were going to come on and chat. When the 8th wicket fell, Ritu Moni was 33 not out off 44, which is a good start to an innings. Bangladesh at that point needed 50 off 41. And then from there, she hit 34 off the next 17 balls, including sealing victory with the 3rd 6 she's hit in her international career. Okay, it was off a free hit, but it was Mahendra Singh Dhoni-esque in terms of idiot over long on and finishing in that grand style from the 2011 World Cup. She's never made an international 50. She's done it on the biggest stage that there is outside of the Women's World Cup. It's like the qualifiers are as big because there's kind of almost arguably more pressure because you're desperate to get to the biggest stage. They've only been to one World Cup before. People might take away from this victory and say it's only Ireland. And I get that. Look, I'm an Irish fan. I'm an Irish human who loves cricket. I've been part of the system for 35 years in that country. You know, I adore it. But that's a really, really good Irish women's side. It really is. There's some world-class players in there. And they've improved out of sight under Ed Joyce, who's having his last tour as the head coach now. And be interesting to see who comes in and takes this group on. They're a very young group. They're superbly talented. They just haven't managed the pressure moments or the big moments well here. That doesn't mean they're not a good team. That doesn't mean they didn't dominate 95% of the game yesterday. They really did. So for Bangladesh to pull it out of the fire under the maximum pressure, when historically they don't do that, that's why I'm describing it as maybe their greatest ever ODI win in this format for the women's team.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but the asking rate, you know, what makes it even more special is that you mentioned during that timeline that the asking rate was more also. It was way above 6. Right.
It nearly tipped 8. We got really close to 8 at one point, yeah.
Yeah. So to win the match from there, especially when you don't have a trend of doing that, you've never done that sort of a thing, right? So that's what makes it really, really special. And before we get on to the captain's knock as well, Nigar Sultana Jyoti's half century at the top, if that didn't happen, the foundation for this would never be there. But before we go there, you know, you mentioned that it was very MS Dhoni-esque. You know, you've got your reason to say that. I was listening to your commentary. There was a line you threw. Can we have that again, if you remember?
Well, look, when you're in the trade that you and I are in, you're aware of occasion. You try not to you know, lapse into jingoism or kind of, I guess, captionism or whatever better description there is. But you are aware that the occasional soundbite will capture the moment well. And it was, I don't know, it was spontaneous. And I guess because of the area with which it was hit over, because of the fact that it was the exact same as Mahendra Singh Dhoni, who was on call? I presume it was Ravi Shastri, wasn't it? With the MS Dhoni finishes up in style. And look, these moments become iconic in our sport. I'm not saying.
Do you remember your life? Do you remember your life?
Yeah, I said something like that, a la MS Dhoni, Ritu Moni, something like that. But yeah, look, I love helping to grow our game. I think that's the biggest part of our role. It's, we're shining a light on the lesser seen aspects of our sport, particularly with these pathway events. It's sometimes under or misunderstood the scale of work that goes in from so many people, not just us as commentators, not at all. The camera people who are out there for 8 hours yesterday in 40 odd degree heat, the graphics engineers, the vision mixers, the EVS guys doing the replays, my director in my ear who has been getting progressively grumpier and grumpier across the 4 days of games we've been doing together. That'd be great banter.
Exactly for saying that.
I know he's been brilliant, Hassan. I'll give him a big shout out. He's been awesome. And it's an 8 camera coverage here. It's not an IPL 30 camera coverage. It's not, but that's the reality of the pathway events. Some of them are as little as 3 or 4 cameras. But I think the fact that we're able to tell these stories and tell these narratives and shine a light on the lesser known cricketers who are really, the pathway events are all about people playing out for their dreams. And last night I'm looking a bit tired because I stayed up watching Rory McIlroy winning the golf, the Irishman. And he spoke so evocatively last night about how you should never give up on chasing your dreams, and how this obsession of winning the Masters and completing the Grand Slam of the 4 majors in golf has taken over every aspect of the 35 years he's been on the planet. And when you get a story of a Frank Nsubuga from Uganda who has spent 24 years playing international cricket and somehow gets to his first ever World Cup for Uganda at the age of 41, 42. And I don't know how you can't love those stories. And I get that they're never going to be as big as an IPL or a men's or women's cricket World Cup final or a T20 World Cup final. I understand that. It doesn't make them any less important or less special. And I think it's a real privilege to be able to tell those stories and to try and do them to a level that hopefully hasn't been done before, and give them the respect that the players and the coaches and the support staff and the families of those players deserve. And I get hugely emotional covering these events, probably more so than a franchise event, because for the best players in the world, it's another competition. And that's not to take away from the PSL or the IPL or Major League Cricket or the Big Bash. They're all great comps, it's SAT 20. They're all great competitions that help popularize and globalize and fan engage our sport. But there is something special about these pathways when you're representing your country, you're chasing your dream, whether you're from a full member or from an associate. And particularly with the women's game and that real drive for equality in terms of coverage and opportunity. It's pretty special.
Yeah, it is special. These pathways are also very important because otherwise, how would these teams come up and how would we get future stars? You don't know. And if the pathways were not there, some good teams might be missing out as well. So it always augurs well. I think, Bangladesh is a country who came through ICC trophy and then, getting the test match status. So it's very important. And thank you, personally as a cricket fan, not as a broadcaster, not as a commentator, as a cricket fan, to you and the ones who are contributing, who have contributed to this, and even the ones who I'm not aware of and I don't know. Thanks to all of them, because often, these are sort of like, I don't know if I should say it, but thankless jobs. People don't acknowledge it, so it deserves acknowledgement. And again, thank you for being very insightful. Those things are there, but we're going to go back quickly to the qualifiers, Lenny. So we mentioned Ritu Moni's innings. How important was Nigar Sultana Jyoti's half century? And I really want to touch base on quite a few things. So we'll try and keep it crisp. How important was Jyoti's innings or any other performance from Bangladesh which you thought stood out?
You're trying to keep me succinct, which is something I'm never very good at. Sorry. I will promise I will try my best. We're all thinking it. It's fine.
Try to keep it as simple as possible.
Kaidat Imtiaz, who I was commentating with yesterday. I'm now off on a segue. You see, you've sparked me off on a segue. Kaidat Imtiaz, who I was commentating with yesterday, who's never done a pathway event before, so she's never done such an extended period of commentary. She's done 7 or 8 hour stints before. She's like, I don't know how you do it, but you just keep talking, don't you? And I was like, Yeah, sometimes that's maybe not a good thing, but she's been great. She's been awesome. Marina's been great, and Joel's been excellent too. The four of us that are here. For your skipper, for the captain of Bangladesh, she looks in career best form, doesn't she? She looks to have really kind of grown with the captaincy. I remember first covering cricket that she played in. I think it was the ACC Women's Asia Cup in Bangladesh. I was in Sylhet in 2021 or 2022, one of the 2 years, might have been late 2021. Sorry, the post-COVID years are merging into each other. And she was an established player, but she was still finding her feet somewhat. And she looked like she had a lot of potential, but often we get to 20 or 30 and get out. And you know, as a consequence, I think it might just be her being her sixth one-day international 50 yesterday. So, you know, for a 27-year-old who's played over 50 games, that's maybe not as good a return as the quality of player that she is. But, you know, you make your maiden ODI 100 a couple of days before against Thailand, a real clip at a real pace, you know, career strike rate in the 50s. And she did that, made that century off 80-odd balls. So she looked in complete confidence. To be honest, I actually thought she was going to go back to back with 200s the way she was playing, but she just probably played a one away from her body. I think she might have thought she hit the ground, or maybe he flicked her pad, but there was a big noise and the bat was away from the pad. So I think it was a fair decision. Good catch from Amy Hunter. I've been really impressed with her leadership. I often read a lot into what captains say to us before and after games, and her communication is really strong. She's very clearly the leader of this team.
Yeah, she is quite the leader, in fact, and courtesy of that half century yesterday and the century, her first century, her maiden century actually in women's ODIs versus Thailand, that puts her right there in the second position. So in the top table of the most run scorers in this women's qualifiers. There's still more matches to go. And Rabia's bowling as well, Fahima's bowling, those were all instrumental in making the comeback they did in limiting Ireland to 235. So it was, I would say, an overall team performance, but the heroics, I think it was Ritumoni's day, night, you know, and she deserves it because she got the team over the line. But having said all of that, you know, you mentioned there were some good performances in the Ireland side as well. Delaney with the half century would set things up nicely. Ola Prendergast, I think it was an all-round performance from her. When I was speaking with Izzy, you know, I did the previous episode with Isabel Joyce, former captain, of course, and we were talking about Ola Prendergast, you know, and how good she is and how she hadn't, you know, come to herself before yesterday's match. But yesterday she contributed with the bat and then again bowled so well with the ball, 2 for 14. But why just 6 overs?
Yeah, well, it's the answer that, or question that a lot of people are asking in Ireland. It's the official line we've been given is that for workload management reasons, she was restricted to 7 overs per match in this qualifier, and everyone within the squad and the setup was aware of that coming in, and they planned as such, and therefore always had 6 bowlers in the team. In fact, when Louise Little was in the team, they had 7 in the first 2 games. So, it's perplexing, I guess. It's just what we've been told. You could probably, if you're really harsh on Gabby Lewis, say that if she could only bowl the 7, maybe she should have bowled the 48th over or the 49th to try and get her impacted. You know, if you aren't able to take the game to the 50th, there's no point having your best bowler bowling that. She was the best bowler on the day yesterday. She's probably Ireland's best bowler right now. She's definitely Ireland's best athlete. And just one slight segue, but very much on point. You kind of get to know all these players, and you look at the quality of them from being up close with them, and you just see Orla Prendergast's physique. It's very similar to Hayley Matthews. It reminds you of one of the Australian women's team in terms of their strength, their conditioning, and their athleticism is so noticeable before you even see them bowl a bowler or hit a ball. And that's, I guess, definitely where the women's game still has to catch up to the men's game, with probably the exception of the Australian team.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting, Lenny. But yeah, you know, you mentioned Hayley Matthews. I've seen her up front. I've seen her play at her game. At the same time, Orla Prendergast as well. I've seen them both, and I have to say, you know, yeah, they are head and shoulders above so many, truth be told. But I just want to touch base on the fact, and I was listening to your commentary yesterday, and after such a loss or 3 consecutive losses, I don't doubt the potential of the team. And I was telling Izzy the same thing, the Ireland team I'm referring to. But it's not easy to get your head out of that thing, or get that thing out of your head and go back onto the field. And you still have to play some more games.
Yeah, well, I think from an Irish perspective, I empathise hugely with the entire squad now. They've got such a good support staff, just like Bangladesh have in place, and I have no idea how they're going to raise themselves. I actually asked that to Gabby, the final question of the post-match yesterday. I was trying to keep it short because she was clearly really significantly distraught, understandably. She gave the straight bad answer. Every game for your country is important and we'll absolutely be able to raise ourselves. But the reality is they've got 7 more days here, and they've got 2 games that, whether they win by 200 runs or lose by 10 wickets, won't affect their outcome of this tournament. There's still ODI rankings points on the line. Of course, they're official ODIs. I would suspect, if I was Ed Joyce and knowing him and kind of his conscientiousness, that he'll probably look to give the 4 players on the bench a good run, maybe give a debut to the young off spinner from the Northwest, Keane McCartney. And look, they may well win their last 2 games. They might be freed from the pressure, but I don't think it really matters. And it's on to a new era. That era is going to end at the end of this week with Ed Joyce. There'll be a lot of emotion around. The girls, like every single person in Irish cricket, hugely respects Ed for every single thing he's done on the pitch, off the pitch. He is being one of our greatest ever ambassadors and maybe our greatest ever player. And because he came in the era that he did, before Ireland had test status, I know he played our first test, but that was his last ever game. Before we had test status, before we got the scale of exposure that we have, he came in an era. You referred to that 97 ICC trophy. He started just after that. It was a different era. But he has been a phenomenon for Irish cricket. He has flown the flag for us in the United Kingdom. He has opened doors for us in a way that so many others wouldn't have been able to walk through without what he did. And I know everyone in Irish cricket appreciates and loves the man and is just so grateful for what he's done for us. And I'm wishing him every success. I don't know what he's doing. I don't think he knows what he's doing yet. But I know whatever he does, he'll be a big success at it. And he'll be, have the support and love of everyone in the Irish cricket community. And finally, just to touch on Hayley Matthews, words will fail me, and I'll keep that short. She's, for me, simply the best player in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big words. And of course, just again, to refer back to Ed Joyce, there's no denying of the contributions he's made to Cricket Ireland, honestly, representing the side in the World Cup and also the England side, but still being the flag bearer, sort of, and now contributing to women's cricket, and also to remember that his sisters represented the side as well, so family altogether,
and brothers, yeah, the whole family really played.
Yeah, the whole family, of course. So kudos to them. But just to go back to the qualifiers, the women's qualifiers, the equation now, the table now spicing up. It's just set, and you still don't know which 2 teams are far ahead. Yes, Bangladesh right at the top due to the 2 wins and the huge margin they won against Thailand with, and Pakistan, the hosts, right next. But at the same time, you can't take the West Indies lightly, and Scotland are they're showing the people that, hey, we are serious.
Yeah, Scotland have been phenomenal. Probably one of the big stories of this tournament, without doubt. I believe they dropped 4, if maybe not 5, catches against Pakistan. So you might say, well, hold on, Pakistan won that game easily by 6 wickets, with an over to spare. But actually, I think if they'd taken any one of those 4, that could have been a very different game, because a little bit like Bangladesh, historically, Pakistan have had some problems with their lower middle order closing out games. If the kind of top order, if you're Munib Ali's, if you're Aliyah Riaz, who's been in good form in this tournament, if they get runs, the game goes one way. But if it comes down to 6, 7, 8, 9 in the order, they get into real trouble. Bangladesh have a massive advantage with that 178-run victory, their highest ever over Thailand. And I think Bangladesh were excellent that day. 4 outstanding individual performances, and they did everything right. But Thailand were really poor that day. They usually bowled and feel exceptionally well. They did anything but, and the performance they put in a couple of days later against Scotland was much more like where they'll be at. But as a consequence, the reason I'm bringing that point up is that I think whilst West Indies and Pakistan will be favoured to beat Thailand, I don't think they'll beat them anything like by the margin that Bangladesh did. So Bangladesh have a massive advantage, having got that poor Thai performance, having played so exceptionally well, and having got them kind of on the hop in their first game. It means they've got that big net run rate advantage. I said at the start of the tournament I'd only make one prediction, that no side would win 5 games and no side would lose all 5. Maybe I'll be right, maybe I'll be wrong. Who knows? Maybe Ireland will lose all 5 and end up bottom of the table despite dominating so many of their games. But if the West Indies beat Pakistan today, that game has literally just started as we're recording this. The whole thing is wide open. There's 4 teams then on 4 points apiece. 2 of them will be unbeaten. One of them will be unbeaten in Bangladesh. They'll be the only ones unbeaten. So they'll hold all the cards close to their chest and then have that net run rate advantage. They could probably lose 1 and still get through. There might be some scenarios where they'll lose 2 and get through with the big net run rate advantage. But just do not rule out Scotland. I'll tell you something. They've played some brilliant cricket, and their next game comes against Bangladesh in the main stadium in Lahore. That's a day-night game on the 15th, I think. Yeah, that's tomorrow. Oh, there we are. Yes, it is tomorrow. That's tomorrow. Sorry, the dates are melded. I'm not doing that game, sadly. I'd love to be doing that game, but I'm doing Ireland-Thailand at the other ground. I might even stay on after the game just to come across and do a little bit of that. But I would not rule out Scotland, particularly after the emotions of that win for Bangladesh over Ireland, their highest ever chase. I would not rule out Scotland maybe upsetting Bangladesh in that contest. Bangladesh will be favourites, of course they will, but Scotland have been exceptional so far. What's impressed me the most, the rate in which they've scored at. Not the fact they keep getting bowled all out, but they're scoring quickly. So if they have a good day, their first game in at the main stadium, remember, maybe they might upset Bangladesh.
Yeah, maybe, but who are you keeping ahead, Scotland or Bangladesh?
Oh, look, we're half Celtic. We're half Celtic, aren't we? But I've been to Bangladesh 3 times, so I don't know. I'm not going to put. Look, Bangladesh are favourites, definitely. If Bangladesh in any way underestimate Scotland, they will get themselves into trouble. I think that's for sure.
Yeah, agreed. And finally, I asked Easy the same thing. Which 2 teams do you predict to make it to the top 2 and make it to the qualifiers?
Look, I think everyone coming into the competition said that the favourites were Pakistan as the hosts and the West Indies as the highest ranked side. But I think what a lot of people weren't considering was the fact that Bangladesh only missed out on net run rate from the ICC Women's Championship. They pushed New Zealand right to the very edge of having to come here to this qualifier. And I think the position Bangladesh are in now is so strong, they should qualify. The question is, can they cope with that pressure as almost favourites now? Because it's historically something that they're not used to, like us in Ireland. Whenever we're used to being underdogs. I think they will qualify. I think they've got enough quality, particularly within that spin bowling attack, the 4-pronged spin bowling attack. You'd imagine with the tournament being pretty short and pretty sharp across 11 days with 15 matches, that maybe the pitches will start to take a little bit more assistance for the spinners. They've got a consistency to their batting for the first time, probably in a long time. And then I think the other spot will come down to a toss-up between probably it'll have to be either West Indies or Pakistan. But if West Indies lose today, they're toast. So in reality, I think it's going to be the 2 Asian sides on their conditions that they're a little bit more used to. But do not rule out Scotland. And there's every chance that who knows, I think as well, if they beat Bangladesh, they may well then go on to beat Ireland. So that would give them 4 wins and probably a real foothold, unless we get a 3-way tie and 4 wins each at the top of the table, where their net run rate will probably count against them. One thing's for certain, I think it'll go down to the final day, and it's been a cracking tournament already, whatever happens from here.
Yeah, it is getting spicier, and a nail-biting end is what it promises. And I'm sure the ones who are not following, I think you will get your eyes on the women's cricket qualifier. ICC qualifies for the women's cricket. So Bangladesh, they've got 2 wins already. They need 2 more wins to seal the deal at least. Yeah, like to ensure that they're going. 3 wins, maybe net run rate, those kind of things might come up, but a lot depends on today's match as well, right?
Yeah, And just to look at it really simply, if they win all 5, they're obviously qualifying. They'll go as champions. If they win 4 from 5, because of their net run rate position, unless they take a real hammering in their one defeat, they should get through, even if 3 sides end up with a 3-way tie on 8 points apiece at the top of the table. But with 3 wins, because of their net run rate, they may even squeeze through. So just keep winning, Bangladesh, and maybe you'll squeeze into what would just be your second ever Women's World Cup, where you might well be dominant and get there with 5 wins from 5. Don't rule that out either. They're playing really good cricket.
Yeah, my commiserations for the Ireland team as well. And I really like the team. I've covered the matches. I did commentary on the matches when they were here. Gabby Lewis and company, they're so nice. And I really like them hiring on the field as well, except for not against Bangladesh. Those things are there. But I wish you guys all the best for the future, of course. And thank you so much for the time, Lenny. Andrew Leonard, ladies and gentlemen. International commentator, of course, and covering women's cricket qualifiers in Pakistan at the moment. Pleasure having you on the mic with SG here. And finally, if you want to say anything before we go.
Yeah, Samannoy, one big last thing to say. Firstly, thanks for having me. Wishing you and everyone in Bangladesh every continued success in continuing to grow your cricket. But remember it, Nayam Barsako Subha Kamana. I wish you a Nepali Happy New Year. You can wish me a Bengali one, and it's a special day.
Yeah, ShubhoNoboborsho.
ShubhoNoboborsho.
Thank you, Lenny. You take care.
Happy New Year, mate. Great to see you. Wishing you all the best for your future endeavors, mate. And looking forward to seeing you in Bangladesh soon.
Yeah, look forward to it. Look forward to it. Likewise. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for watching On the Mic with SG. I think that's it. Oh.